Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'm going to be doing another serious topic video, and it's going to be about the detention centers that are on the borders, and not really just on the borders, like everywhere around the country. And it's not specific to anyone, any single detention center. Like my grandma works a lot with the Homestead Detention Center and helping to try to get that in better conditions and help the people there as well. And there's also the Texas detention centers. It's just like a broad overview of it. It's not also really a video about immigration. I just wanted to touch upon a few things about the psychological effects that these detention centers have on kids, the conditions that these people are living in the detention centers, and yeah, just going through all that together. So let's get started. I first want to start off with talking about how the conditions are like within the centers. It's just a broad overview of a bunch of research that I did. So, and like the video before, I'll be putting all the sources that I used in the description below. So first, the conditions, these people are cramped in space. There are a lot of detention centers that people literally don't have any room to even lay down because they're all just so tightly packed. There's also a lot of the times they're without basic necessities such as soap or toothpaste. They are sleeping on concrete floors without any mattresses or pillows or anything. They're standing for days because they don't have space. There's no place to wash your hands, let alone shower. So this was at an Arizona CBP facility. They said that a 15-year-old girl from Honduras reported that an officer groped her during a pat-down in front of other migrants and officers, and I'm really not surprised by that at all. I'm sure it wasn't just her. I'm sure that they do this to a lot of people. So there also aren't enough diapers for babies, and which means that they're either going diaperless or they have to sit in their dirty diapers, which is very not healthy and can be cause infections as well. They have freezing cold temperatures and the lights are on 24/7. I don't think I've found a facility that wasn't one of the bullet points that they gave. So lights are on all the time. There have been a lot of outbreaks of the flu, lice, chickenpox, and scabies. There was one case where there was a 19-month-old baby that died due to infection that was not treated at all in these conditions. So far 24 people, including 7 children, migrants, have died in the Trump administration, but that is most likely an underestimate because they're not really going to report that there's another bill that they're trying to pass or agreement that they're trying to make that are saying that they want everyone to be notified when someone passes away. But since then, there hasn't really, I don't think there's been a requirement to report all the deaths, so this is definitely an underestimate. And then more than 50,000 people are being held in ICE facilities. So next I want to talk about the Flores Agreement, and this agreement is for all the unaccompanied children. This was what it was originally made for, but now, since 2015, it includes all children, even if they're with their parents. So they can't be held longer for 20 days. And they must have access to food and drinking water, medical assistance in the event of emergencies, toilets and sinks, adequate temperature control and ventilation, adequate supervision to protect minors from others, separation from unrelated adults whenever possible, and contact with family members who are arrested with the minor. Because this agreement is in place, we would think that the conditions for children would be better, but it's really not. And I'd be surprised if they had access to anything on this list in these detention centers, just because I've heard, there have been a lot of horror stories, and I can go on and on talking about stories, but that's not really the point of this video. If you guys want to do your own research on that and see all the horrible pictures and stories, please be my guest. But yeah, so this agreement hasn't been upheld, and so now they're talking about sending money to the border. They want to send $4.6 billion to the border. They included a requirement to notify lawmakers within 24 hours after the death of a migrant child in government custody. So that's what I was talking about before, where there was probably an underestimate. Now they're including a requirement to notify the lawmakers. And there's also a 90-day time limit on children spending time in temporary intake facilities. And so the bill was originally to help give aid to the migrants in the centers or at the border, but the problem is that many Democrats don't want to send money to basically help something that that shouldn't be happening. So basically they're saying that they don't want to encourage your cruelty towards kids. Like, hey, you guys are being really awful to these kids and to these people. Let's give you $4.6 billion. Because there's not really, they were upset because there weren't really any limitations to what they could use the money for. So therefore, they don't have restrictions on whether or not it's going to be actually used to help the migrants, or it's just going to be used to be put in, like, let's say, the Border Patrol official's paycheck. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, who's very, very on the up and up about this issue. I forgot the word for issue. But she's very outspoken, and she's actually a alumni of Boston University, which is where I go, so that's pretty cool too. But she said the decision is an abdication of power that we should refuse to accept. The Trump administration, she said, will keep hurting kids if we let them. So if we accept that they're giving them this money, they're just going to keep hurting kids, because it's like a reward almost for what they're doing, which is wrong. Like, while we do want to be able to give them money to help the kids, we don't have the ability to the restrictions, limitations that we need on this money to actually make sure that they're doing it and to enforce that they're doing it. So another thing that I wanted to talk about were the kids in cages. So I know that there's, like, where I've done my research, it says that everything is stopped, but we can't be 100% sure. And even though they're not in cages, they're still in these tight detention centers, and it's basically like a cage, but not really. They just don't have the metal bars surrounding them like they used to. So I just wanted to, like, touch upon that, tell you guys what's happening in there. And so one cage would have about 20 kids in it. I'm not sure about the size of the cage, but if that is, like, a big deal, like, then it must be a smaller cage. Like, I don't know. I just think even putting one kid in a cage is just way too much. But in the cages, there would be bottles of waters and bags of chips. So, hey, we have food and water, right? And as a blanket, they would have large foil sheets. Once again, lighting is on 24/7. About 200 people in there were minors without adults, and about 500 people were families. The adults could be charged with illegal entry and put in jail, and their kids would be left alone, and they would be without their kids. Reporters couldn't take any photos or interview any of the detained people, so therefore there's obviously something that they're hiding. About 2,000 kids have been taken away from their families. Stories about kids being separated from their parents, and parents' arms, and parents not knowing where their kids are like very relevant. Not relevant, but very common to hear that. And I'm gonna talk about this later, but it reminds me of, like, the photos that you see remind me of, like, times where it was in the Holocaust, where kids were literally dragged away from their parents. So I'm gonna touch more upon that later, but, you know, it's like, it reminds me a lot of that. Where there is a long-term facility that congressional lawmakers will be visiting, holding about 1,500 kids that will be separated from their families. So lawmakers have been, like, trying to visit them and see what the actual conditions are, and talk to the people in there and the Border Patrol officials. And the Border Patrol officials in Texas argue that the reason they have to take the kids away is basically to warn others and set examples. So the reason that they're taking these kids away is basically to say, hey, if you cross the border illegally, we're going to take your kid away from you. Which, I'm not really touchy about immigration in my views on that, but I also think that yes, you shouldn't be crossing the border illegally, but it also shouldn't be okay to take someone's kid away. It shouldn't be okay to be cruel to the kids. It shouldn't be okay to be cruel to even the parents. Yes, they did something illegal, but that doesn't mean we torture them and treat them like they're animals. So, the agents running the facilities claim that they have adequate food, access to showers, and clothes, and medical cares. They're supposed to be all the people in there are supposed to move through the facility, and it take 3 days for children to be passed to shelters funded by the Department of Health and Human Services, but as we've seen, this is definitely not happening at all. Agents also said that in most cases, family with children under 5 are allowed to stay together, but even if they're 6 to 10 years old, like, until they're like, even if they're 16 years old, taking them away from someone's family is still awful and horrible, and it will do damage on them, because especially as a teenager, their brains are still developing. It doesn't say, they're not saying like even if, no matter at what age, kids should not be taken from their parents. If they are a minor, they should not be taken away from their parents. Even if they're not a minor, they really should be able to stay with their family. But especially in a case where it's a minor, they should not be taken away from their families. So Michelle Brand, I don't know if I'm saying that right. She's the director of migrant rights at the Women's Refugee Commission. She met a 16-year-old taking care of a 4-year-old that had to change diapers. And so the 16-year-old originally thought that the 4-year-old was 2 years old, but when they reunited the 4-year-old with their aunt, the aunt said that she was 4, and the reason that they didn't understand that was because the little girl was not speaking. She was so scared, but even if she was, she didn't speak the same language as a 16-year-old. Michelle also saw agents yelling at a group of 5-year-olds playing. So they were just playing, and they were screamed at for just playing. And it's not like they have toys or books to use, so like what else are they going to do? Just sit there in silence? Like, that's insanity. She also saw a young boy who was completely quiet, not talking to anybody, and clutching a photocopy of his mom's ID. So that's also another case where like kids will like go into themselves and be quiet, not want to talk to anybody, and be very scared. Obviously they're going to be scared. So also Dr. Colleen Kraft, she's the head of the American Academy of Pediatrics. The staff, she said that the staff can give books or toys to the kids if they're upset, but they're not allowed to touch them, and these kids are left with no physical affection, which could traumatize them even more, because they're basically left alone to just like suffer by themselves and not have the care they need from an adult. And also the cells aren't supposed to hold anyone for longer than 72 hours, but that's obviously not true. And so next I just want to talk about the psychological effects on kids. So when the families are together, so when the families are detained together, if the kids are old enough to understand what is happening, they will be able to like feel the stress individually and on an individual level. Whereas if they're not old enough to understand what's happening, they will feed off of the energy and the stress that their parents have, and basically take all that weight and put it on their shoulders as well. They may have issues such as difficulty regulating emotions and forming healthy relationships, anxiety, depression, and an impaired sense of self or self-efficacy in the future. There's a connection to how the parents feel and how the kids feel, because like I said before, the parents are their role models, so the kids will feed off of what they're giving them and feed off of their energy and see that they're very upset in this high-stress environment, scared, and if they're scared, then the kids obviously are going to be scared because they don't know what's happening. So there also can be PTSD and heightened risk of suicide and self-harm in the future. So just going down also another list that I found of just psychological effects on kids, they could be at risk to depression and anxiety, self-harm, suicidal ideation, developmental and behavioral regression, PTSD, lack of appetite, weight loss, frequent infections, and gastrointestinal symptoms. They're in a high-stress environment for a long period of time, so it's like a never-ending nightmare. And that's what's so scary, is that it's not just like a one day, like a stressful situation. Like, we all experience stress, even as kids. Like, we are in stressful environments and we're like, oh, I'm so stressed. But they eventually work themselves out. These kids are in this situation for who knows how long, and not only are they scared, but there's no one really there to calm them down because their parents are just as scared as they are. So the kids in cages will become sad, depressed, and aggressive. It doesn't matter how long they've been in there. They could be in there for a day or for weeks, and they will start acting the same way. They have high levels of hopelessness, insomnia, fatigue, bedwetting, weight loss, nightmares, clinginess, headaches, and gastrointestinal symptoms. And they have seen that several children have mimicked suicide by grabbing the cords that hang around their neck and hold their ID cards and tightening them, and they say that they would rather die than spend another night in those facilities. So, talking back to what has changed over time with the immigration policy. So Trump has a zero tolerance policy and was separating kids from their parents. He signed an executive order in June of 2018 trying to end family separation while keeping a zero tolerance policy, but it really didn't do anything because it's still the zero tolerance policy. And so the migrants crossing the border are arrested and put in a holding facility. They're then transferred to these detention centers if they're seeking asylum, and the kids are sent to the shelters and decide if the children will be deported or reunited with relatives in the United States if they can find them. So basically, immigration has changed a lot, especially since Trump has been in office and has had the zero tolerance policy. I think that, just touching upon my idea of immigration and my opinion on immigration, I think that this country is built on immigrants. Basically, we all are immigrants at some point. We have family. Unless you're a Native American, you were an immigrant. Like, your family was a family of immigrants. So, but at the same time, it's really hard to say that we should let everybody in if people aren't doing it correctly. If people are crossing the border illegally and not caring, and just, it's a very hard topic, and I don't want to touch too much upon it right now because I feel like I'm just talking about the detention centers alone. And so basically, like, these conditions are awful. Like, I don't know how anyone could agree that this is the right thing to do. The Trump administration is ignoring how awful they are, and they're trying to say, like, Trump was trying to say that, oh, these detention centers are great, they're helping people get to, like, the places they need, or, like, helping people, like, we're trying to get Mexico to hold people that are seeking asylum as well, to help us, and these detention centers are doing fine, but in reality, they're really not. There's way too many people in them, and they're not handling this all correctly. And while I don't have my own solution to it, I think that there definitely needs to be something being done about the conditions, because once again, I'm going to talk about Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. She's comparing these facilities to concentration camps, which is basically what I was saying before, and so she's comparing them to concentration camps and saying that it's like we're torturing them, and we are. And while there isn't a mass murder of people are still dying, people are still getting sick, and we're not doing anything about it. We're not trying to make these conditions right. We're just kind of watching it happen. I think the hardest things that people that aren't, and I feel like this is for every problem that we have in this world, is that if you aren't in the situation, you don't understand it, you don't care about it, or it's just not relevant to your life, so why should you? But I feel like at this point, we're treating people like we're animals. This is a land of freedom, and that's why people come here, to be free and to escape all the horrible tragedies that they've had to encounter and had to endure throughout their lives. And yet we're sitting here saying, oh, well, this is how you're going to be treated when you come into the United States. And it's just so wrong. So this whole video is basically just talk about the detention centers, a lot about the kids specifically, and just start the conversation. I will be doing many, many more videos about immigration in the future, I'm sure, but right now this is just starting the conversation about that. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Comment down below any kinds of things that you guys want to talk about that's due to immigration, or any facts that you guys have or information that you guys want to share. And make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will be posting a video every week. I didn't post last week, so I'll be posting 2 videos this week. And make sure to also turn on the post notifications, because I don't post on a specific day, so that you guys know when I actually do post. Follow all my social media linked down below, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.